Hello. So this is going to be a little bit of a dreary video because two things. One, today it decided to be foggy for no reason in the middle of California in a California winter. It decided to be foggy. And two, I blew all the lights in my room at once because I put the wrong light bulbs into my ceiling fan and they all exploded at once. So now it's completely dark in my room and all through this part of my house. So there's no light. So this is going to be kind of a mood lighting kind of situation here. I wanted to talk about surprises because I was thinking, I went to the gym today as usual, and I was trying to think about a subject to talk about while I was working out, and I finally settled on surprises because lately I find it's really difficult for me to get excited about a lot of things. Have you ever come up with something that you want to do, and when you think through the actual process of what doing that thing would be like, and then you decide not to do it? That's how I feel a lot of the time with books and with movies and television or video games or music or any kind of activity that involves media. I think there's a lot of reasons for this. One is that a lot of these activities ask something of you, effort-wise, and a lot of the time I feel like it's either not enough or it's too much. There's no balance for some reason in my brain, at least. Like, for example, if you have a book, you really have to pay attention to absorb the information and comprehend it, what you're reading. And the opposite is true of a movie, because the movie is happening to you. Very little is being asked of you because it's visual. You don't really have to use your imagination a lot of the time. Sometimes you have to work to suspend your disbelief, but that's about as far as it goes in terms of asking you to meet it halfway. So those things are on opposite scales of each other. The visual is right in front of you, and the program progresses whether you want it to or not. And every form of consumable media has a effort factor. And what that means to everybody is different, because something that might be taxing to me wouldn't be as taxing to you. Like, it's probably really easy for you to sit down and watch a 2.5-hour movie or something like that, or to read a book. And for me, it's really easy to sit and play a video game for 2.5 hours, or listen to a whole album from start to finish, or something like that. Two, it could be overstimulation, because when you consume a lot of media, you have a lot of options, and it can become very overwhelming, I think, at least. As a generation, we have movies, television, homemade program is always right at our fingertips. Hulu is always on, Netflix is always on, YouTube is always ready to go. I remember that transition. I remember when you had to turn on the TV at a certain time because you would miss your show, or you had to set up a VHS, which are these horrible little rectangles with tape in them that you probably don't. It's fine. And I think from this overstimulation, which is pretty critical, I think there's a lack of a surprise factor, which is the main subject of what I'm talking about. I think that when storytelling and media it fills your everyday life, it's difficult to be surprised. When you absorb a lot of anything, it becomes normalized to you. I think that last thing is really important, which is the prompt of this rant. The magical thing about art versus something more linear, which is arguable, like math or science, is that they're not really that different. There's a beauty and value in the perfect execution of something, but I think where great things come from... I'm getting a phone call. I'm gonna ignore it though. Just gonna play a little ukulele while I wait for it to end. Still ringing. Any day now. Alright. So where was I? There's a beauty and a value in the perfect execution of something, but I think where great things come from is an understanding of the equation and flipping it on its head in a way that everyone can understand and that they hadn't thought of before. That's probably really redundant to say. I mean, that's super obvious to some people, I guess, but it's still true for both things, for both linear, more educational pursuits and art. When something is executed that already exists, but to a T, like for example, this is the perfect sitcom, it hits all the check marks, like something like that, that's different. But can you imagine if somebody made a new kind of TV show entirely? Like reality programming, when that first came out, that was such a big deal. Like when Survivor, I mean, there was little things here and there like that before that, but when Amazing Race started and Survivor started, it was this, we had to create a new genre for it. It didn't really fit into any of the barriers or the context clues that we created for television. But the thing is that if something new happened, we would still try to define it under those the pre-existing contexts, no matter what, because that's how we understand, is contextual clues. But you don't even have to go that far to be groundbreaking, because I remember when you can still exist within genre barriers and do something that's never been done before. I remember when single camera comedy shows with no laugh tracks started, and they became a more popular thing. It was crazy. There was a show, it wasn't telling us when to laugh, like Scrubs and Arrested Development and things like that. It was mind-blowing. I loved that. I was so excited. And it got to the point where now I can't watch things like, I mean, there's a lot of those that are just, they're poorly written and badly executed, but the laugh track itself is a turnoff to me. I can stand it in older, more like antique shows like Friends and Frasier and I Love Lucy, things that have existed for a long time because they were out of their time period. But when a show does it now, it feels draconian, kind of. It feels backwards and weird and kind of antiquated, like it's not really, like it's not existing within its time period. So I hear a laugh track and it's frustrating. That's why it's hard for me to watch anything on CBS, because it's all this line, pause, wait for the laugh, line. Like it just feels weird. But the same thing applies to other media. There have been things like that. Like three-dimensional gaming was huge. Color movies with sound, the increasing production value of music, and the evolution of written word, the structure and the execution of a novel. Everything grows and changes, and sometimes faster than others. But when you consume so much media, you start to notice patterns and structures are really similar. The math of art. I enjoy a lot of YouTube shows that are comedy critique channels, like YMS, Everything Wrong With, things like that. And those shows are great. They constantly make me laugh, but they also make me think a lot. And they cause me to think more critically about everything, which isn't a good or a bad thing, you know. But I start picking things apart, and in some ways that makes it a lot harder to enjoy things. Well, that could be construed as being negative. I think it also makes the special things even more special, because they overcome that barrier of critical deconstruction. And how are we supposed to grow as artists if we go around thinking that everything is just perfect all the time? With perfection, there's no need to change or grow. It's Eastern philosophy, always remaining in the question because it's more important than the answer. The question keeps you searching. And where that leaves me is that I have a really hard time starting anything if I get any kind of idea in my head of what it's going to be like, because I want to be surprised. And occasionally those surprises happen. For example, I find that recently I don't listen to a lot of new music. Having a very little bit of musical ability myself, barely any, and having a musically oriented family, the pattern of music emerges a lot, and I can see the skeleton of it pretty easily, which makes newer music a lot less fun to listen to because there isn't much surprise. Although older rock and pop isn't always surprising either. There's kind of a weird, like a beautiful charm to the time period for me, and it's a nostalgia factor, which is an unfair judgment call. I mean, I grew up with the 50s and the 60s and the 70s on the oldie station. That's the music I listened to. I grew up with the Beatles and the Stones and with Donovan and all these different bands and people, the Supremes, like stuff like that I really liked. I love doo-wop. Sometimes I am surprised though. I initially dismissed Meghan Trainor, who's this new pop artist, as just being another pop artist. I saw the picture of the video on YouTube. I didn't really click on it. I heard the song once or twice. I was like, oh, okay. And then I started listening to it. And I discovered there's this really great kind of surprising humor to the lyrics. There's a really great surprising humor to the lyrics. It's off-putting in an awesome way, because for some people it'll be like, what'd she say? And that's so cool. And also I love the homage to that doo-wop sound in her music. It sounds like it fell out of that time period, or Hairspray or something like that. It has that kind of quality to it, and I really like that. I think it's cool to take an old sound and meld it with a new one and throw your personality into it. It creates a new thing. It's a surprise. And that's what's so cool about it. And I also heard another song on the radio in the last couple of days called Riptide. By this guy whose name is escaping me right now, of course. I could easily pause and look it up, but literally if you type YouTube on YouTube, just type the word Riptide, it's probably the first thing that'll come up. because it's a pretty popular song. And it's not a complicated song. I learned it myself on my ukulele last night because I was bored. It's like 3 chords, but it's a little more than 3 chords. But there's something about it. It's really kind of charming, and it has a nice sound to it. And I looked at the music video, and it's really fun. It's kind of an interesting, cool music video. Whoever directed it, mwah, good job. Sometimes things surprise you. I mean, to be fair, I think having an overexposure to media shortens your attention span, especially with we have a bite-sized mentality to a lot of popular entertainment now. So sitting down for a 2.5-hour movie is a very daunting task for me, especially if I'm not in a movie theater where it's dark and there's nothing to look at. All I can do is focus on what's right in front of me. But there's something driving in that surprise factor. As a person that creates stuff, I think as a person that does anything, really, but especially as a person that creates stuff, it makes me want to strive to surprise, to create something that you wouldn't expect. I think that's a much healthier thing to strive for than perfection. Good or bad are pretty objective ideas, because what's good to you might not be good to me, and vice versa. Like, you might think the Meghan Trainor's not very good, or you might think that Riptide's a stupid song. And maybe you should just try to surprise yourself when you make something, and hope that somebody else is surprised as well. Yeah, that's a big deal, I think, too, I think to some extent you do need to worry about what other people think. But I think that if you're happy with what you're making because it surprises you, the chances are that excitement and surprise and love will be infectious to others. And I think that's what's so exciting about people like Meghan Trainor or other really good artists, is that there's an infectious nature to what they make. And I mean, obviously there's people helping, and there's a team of people that put these songs together, stuff like that. But having done a little bit of research and spent time with her online social presence, there's something about her personality that's really engaging too. And there was something about, like, there's a band I like called Jukebox the Ghost, and they have infectious personalities. They're very funny and cool people, and you want them to be your friends. I think that's where I find a lot of fuel as a person that makes things or does anything, is to surprise yourself. It can be anything from, like, when you're making a story to when you go to the gym, keeping yourself surprised. Like, don't just do what you always do. Don't hop on the treadmill for 10 minutes, do some push-ups, do some sit-ups, and leave, because your body will get bored and your body won't change. You don't change or get affected by things by always doing the same stuff over and over and over again, by consuming the same. I had a teacher who passed away very, very recently in college, and she told us as a group that I think somebody asked her, she allowed us to always ask her a question at the beginning of class. It could be anything you wanted. And I think somebody asked her how she got, like, what did she like to do? How did she get her information and stuff? And she said to us, I don't like to get all of my information the same way. I like to make, she reads, she goes on the internet, she does everything that is, watches the news. She said it's better to not get stuck consuming the same things the same kind of way all the time. The more that you're changing it up, the more that you surprise yourself, it keeps your brain doing stuff and creating things. When I come up with an idea that keeps surprising me, where I'm able to keep stacking ideas on top of that initial spark, and it's like, oh, well, this character can do this, and this character can do that, and they can meet here, and oh, I can put that character in here, and I can put it all together, and it just keeps stacking up and stacking up like this weird little, it's like a Christmas with presents falling out of the sky. So I guess where that leaves me is, I want to know what surprises you. What is it that's, if you've ever felt kind of jaded, I guess is the only word I can think of, or a little bit down about something, and then a new book or a new movie or something came along and just really surprised you and took you out of what you thought was comfortable and changed your mindset and opened possibilities to you, because that's always so exciting, and it's what we strive for. So post below things that surprised or excited you in media that you had grown jaded or accustomed to. And I have a bad rap of really hating on specific forms of media with my friends, but I'm pretty fair. I have problems with every individual thing, theater or movies or books or music or video games, everything has its own kind of problem that's tearing it apart. And maybe I'll get into that a little bit more in another video. I'll talk about what is working and what's not working in popular media. But what I did want to talk about is the positive thing, which is surprises. And I think that's what's so cool is when you can look at something the way it is, see the formula, see the equation, and transcend that structure to create something new and to be exciting. And it doesn't have to be something nobody's ever seen before. It can just be taking something that exists and looking at it this way, and looking at it this way, or putting on a new pair of glasses and looking at it that way. You know what I mean, metaphorically speaking. So tell me something that surprised you. And I hope that this was kind of interesting and you know, me just working through this idea. So I hope it helped you think about media and stories and the way that you take things into, because I don't think we think critically about the way that we absorb stuff, and sometimes we either get too critical about things or we just let everything hit us and don't think about it. We just kind of go, well, every movie is good, I enjoy everything, and that's great that you can enjoy everything. And if you're like me and you get really critical and it makes it difficult to enjoy things, how can you find that spark again without necessarily having to just wait around to be surprised by something? And also, what are those things that you get hit by? You see a movie and it just changes your mind about things. It shows you a new perspective. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this. That's all I got. Bye-bye.